Calder, what are some of the core elements that you have to prove in a malpractice case, and how do you go about explaining those to clients?
Sure. This is a conversation I have with every client that comes in our door. Uh, the elements of a medical negligence claim in Ohio are first the standard of care. What is the standard of care in this particular case? And was it breached? Did the medical treatment that was provided fall below and not meet the standard of care? Did that breach, that violation, cause the injuries that we're talking about in this case? And if so, what is the amount that the patient should be compensated for those injuries?
So, what does standard of care actually mean in practice, and how do you determine whether or not that standard of care has been violated?
Sure. The standard of care means what a reasonably careful medical provider would do in the same or similar situations. Now, that standard is universal across the United States. The standard of care is not different in an urban setting or a rural setting or in Ohio versus in Illinois or Florida. It's universal. And the way it's determined is by another medical professional. In the state of Ohio, you're not even allowed to file a medical negligence claim unless another medical provider has reviewed the patient's medical record and is willing to sign an affidavit notarized to say that I have reviewed the records and I believe that the standard of care was not met in this case and caused the injuries at issue.
And where do these standards of care come from? Are these written documents that are provided to doctors and hospital systems?
Oftentimes, the standard of care can be um, written or in a guideline or in a policy, but more often than not, it's not written down because for often for this reason is they don't want lawyers bringing it up in a lawsuit. And it's true that every patient is different and everyone needs individualized medical care. And so often the standard of care comes from another medical or multiple medical providers in the same line of work or an overlapping treatment to explain here is what our accepted standard is in this industry, in this specialized area of medicine for treating this type of patient in this situation.
And what about causation? How do you go about proving that the mistake that a doctor made caused the actual injury that you're experiencing now?
Yeah, again, that needs to come from another medical provider under Ohio law. It's going to need to be able to explain just physiologically and with the science of medicine how they can determine that the injuries here were caused by the breach or the violation eh, eh, that occurred in this case. Now, sometimes common sense, can speak for itself. If the patient had a heart attack and died, and the death certificate says in more medical terms that the patient died from a heart attack, common sense. But even in that case, you would still be required to have an expert come into court and testify and explain to the jury how the heart attack caused the death.
And so, what are some of the types of evidence that you need to collect, and how are those pieces of evidence persuasive when it comes to these types of cases?
Sure. I think the most effective and persuasive evidence is having many different types of evidence, whether that be not only not the medical record, but lab results and the policies of the hospital and whether those were followed, and the testimony of all the providers. Now, in different cases, one type of evidence might be explain the case better to the jury than others. For instance, in a case involving a heart attack, a patient needs to receive treatment within a specific time frame. So a timeline might be really helpful. When did they first start seeing symptoms? When did they come into the emergency room? When were they first seen? When, if they did get the treatment that they needed, was it in the window that's required, or was it outside of it? And does that explain why the patient now has heart failure and permanent damage to their heart? Another good example is in cases involving low potassium. You need to be very careful to raise the potassium slowly and controlled. Raising it too fast can cause permanent brain damage. And so lab results are very helpful to show where is the potassium over time as it's coming up. Is it being controlled? Is someone watching it? Is it going slowly, or is it shooting up out of control? And that shows what happens here. But again, it's most often and most effective to show a combination of different types of evidence to paint a full picture for the jury so they understand what happened here.
And where do you get that evidence from? Are these hospital records and timelines and things like that all required documents that the hospital has to provide to you if they're asked to?
So, especially in today's world of computers and electronic medical records, the hospital has a wealth of information, and it's much, much more than what you see on your MyChart or what you're able to log into. The information and data that hospitals are collecting on each patient individually, we know what that looks like, where to get it, where it's kept, and how it can be organized. We also know all what hospital policies and procedures can tell us a lot about what should have been done or how staffing was. Also, look at the metadata behind the medical record to show what changes were made and when. And oftentimes, simple things like the schedule for the day and people's time cards or their badges when they swiped in and out of a door can paint a surprising picture of what was going on during the medical treatment that's at issue.